Ben Studio is really about making a game that we want to play.
Ben Studio, from a development perspective, to me means a studio that's kind of punching outside its weight class. It's really kind of biting off a lot and chewing it and doing things that people didn't think were possible, and we just kind of said, we're going to make this really big game called Days Gone.
When we were tossing around ideas for a new IP, because we were given the chance to say, hey, Ben Studio, you can make something brand new, something, you're just going to create this thing and create a world and create characters and create the gameplay experience. What we've always done is single-player narrative-driven games. You know, all the Siphon Filter games and Resistance Retribution and Uncharted, of course. We learned so much from working on Uncharted for how to tell that kind of a story.
From the start of the process, we had about 40 to 50 people, but we realized it's next gen, it's big, we need to grow, and so we brought people on strategically to kind of, from other AAA studios to kind of really help us, up our game in every department. At this point, we're sitting at about 130 people total in the studio, so it's much bigger than we've ever been, but still way smaller than you would expect for a game this big.
There is a lot of passion in the studio for the things that make up the game. We have a lot of guys at the studio that have Harleys and other types of bikes, and they all ride.
We got a lot of people who, longtime bikers and, new bikers, older guys like myself who kind of come into the fold and really wish we'd done it sooner, but it's a strong culture. We go on rides, and it really kind of helps us relate to the experiences.
I think that's where the mojo in the studio comes in, is we have guys who are immensely talented at what they do. Like, one engineer spearheaded the entire horde, as an example, figured out a way to get 500 creatures on the screen at the same time. I mean, that's an amazing achievement, and that's just one example where we have like peak individuals working at the top of their game, and that's the only reason Days Gone exists.
Building an open world horde game with a motorcycle, new IP, all these things at once, and a new engine, a new team. I think that it's just our ability to kind of declare, this is our mission statement, this is our goal, and just kind of do whatever it takes to achieve it. I think that that's our superpower, and we just went for it. In a way, I think that's like Deacon from the game, going up against a horde. That's been a metaphor for us making Days Gone. And I think that's only possible at Ben Studio.
Days Gone is a world that comes for you. It's a world that is dangerous everywhere you go. We set Days Gone in that world because we hadn't seen it a lot in video games, and it brought something to the experience that we really, really needed. The danger comes from not just the freakers, but it comes from marauders who want to snipe you off your bike. It comes from the weather that will make it impossible for you to stay on a muddy trail. The world changes after dark. More freakers come out. It's brutal and it's harsh. It can be rough sometimes. Freakers are human beings who were infected by a virus that killed the world. Freakers are alive, and they are mutated. And one of the key storylines in Days Gone is they are continuing to mutate. They are changing even as you play the game. We have several types of freakers in the game. Each one of them has their own challenges. Swarmers, for example, are adult males and females, and they tend to roam in groups. They are very, very strong and very hard to kill. And the Screamer, what she has is a sort of verbal attack. She will bring in swarms, and when you hear this scream that it makes, basically puts an effect on the world and makes it awfully hard to escape. We have the Breaker, which is like a big brute. You're gonna run into infected animals. Rest in Peace is a cult that worships the Freakers. The Rippers want to be like the Freakers. They dress like them, they scar themselves. Because the Rippers worship the Freakers, they won't attack them. When you're playing Days Gone, you just have to be aware of everything around you all the time. We really wanted to build a world that was dangerous. You can explore, it's beautiful, but what if that world was always trying to kill you? The thing about a game like Days Gone is it's the sum of its parts, so that you have, the open world, and you have a bike, and you have enemies, you have humans and freakers and animals, and you have lots of tools to deal with them. The high desert of Central Oregon is sort of built for the kinds of traversal that we really wanted to explore. We are so excited to have players finally be able to jump into the Farewell Wilderness in the world of Days Gone and get a sense of who Deacon St. John is and what this experience is. So when this thing comes out on April 26th, we are just so excited to see what you think about this world. The Horde was the first idea we had for what Days Gone was going to be. Our art director, Don Yatomi, who's an amazing concept artist, had done this painting of this guy up on an old sawmill, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds of freakers all in a row trying to get to him. So the idea was that you would have a horde of freakers, a horde of creatures who want to kill you and eat you, and they would chase you.
When we were creating the Horde, we knew the potential of something so big and how intimidating and terrifying it could be.
The Horde is a flood. We have over 40 hordes in the game, and each of them have their own stomping grounds, their own place where they hibernate, where they drink, you know, some sort of a food source like a mass grave.
The biggest technical challenges were just the numbers that we needed. You know, nobody's scared of 20 guys like they are 200 guys, right? And what's more terrifying than 200 guys? 300. And so we kept just demanding that we need more and more.
This is going to be a unique enemy type that no one has ever played before. 500 creatures all at once, chasing you, flowing after you.
I've always called it a tidal wave that's just coming right at you, and it's really cool and emergent as a result.
It's not just a single entity. It's not even just a dozen creatures. It's the fact that they're all moving together like a wave. You have to have something that's going to stem that tide. You're going to have to figure out a way to stop it on its terms.
Grenade! Come on.
So when you're going to take on the Horde, you've got to be prepared. You want to make sure that you understand where the choke points are, and that you have a plan A, you have a plan B, a plan C.
It's about knowing who your enemy is and looking for ways to use the environment against them.
The players have to dynamically change their strategies all the time, and a lot of tension comes from that. The player emerges from an encounter saying, I didn't have a plan for that, but wow, what I came up with was awesome and I barely escaped.
There's an intensity there that is terrifying. Once they start chasing you, they're not going to stop. How are you going to defeat the Horde? One of the things that I think is, really surprising about the world of Days Gone is that it isn't limited to just humans. Everything in Days Gone is grounded in reality. And one of the things we really wanted to do was make sure that if we have, infected creatures in the Farewell Wilderness, that they're the kinds of animals that you would find here anyways. It's a virus that has jumped species, so that we have infected wolves, which we call runners. We have infected bears, which we call ragers. And we have infected crows, which we call criers. And all of these things are super dangerous threats.
So you take these creatures that are already predators themselves, and it just makes them way more lethal, way more dangerous, way hungrier, and way more aggressive, and way more interested in the player, and also way more interested in knocking him off his bike and eating him, and maybe not even in that order. One of the cool things about these animals is they're survivors too. I mean, they've got primal instincts that have kind of given them the edge to keep them alive this long.
In terms of gameplay, they offer very, very different types of enemies. Things that wouldn't normally have been aggressive, like crows, are now hyper-aggressive, and they will dive bomb you if you go anywhere near their nests. Runners you always have to be looking for. They're infected wolves.
There are these creatures that are meant to take away your greatest asset, which is the bike. The players feel like they've got this bike, that nothing can touch them, but then we have this creature type that can not only run as fast as the bike, but jump midair and knock you off of it. So it levels the playing field.
Good luck if you run into a rager bear, because they're big, they're strong, they're hard to kill, and they are relentless.
They deal a lot of damage, and if you get close, they're going to grab you and thrash you and throw you around, and you might survive that, you may not. They've got that strong survival instinct, so you just have to get out into the thick of it with them, but you also have to keep your distance and constantly be moving to adjust it to keep separation from them.
Here, catch!
You're going to be surprised when you try to survive the world of Days Gone at just how many different types of freakers there are. Not just infected humans, but animals as well. We wanted to have a means of transportation that was important to the character, and we wanted to have a reason to explore the open world on the back of the bike. Because Deacon is a member of the Mongrels MC, which is an outlaw motorcycle club built around motorcycles, the bike is symbolic as well as a physical thing that he uses to survive. And that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to explore this type of a character in a post-apocalyptic setting, is because his connection to his bike is deeper, I think, than any other type of vehicle that you could have if you were just an average Joe living in this world. One of the things that we have worked so hard on in the game is making the bike fun, whether you ride a real bike or not. So with just an hour riding around on this bike, you can start feeling like you're a pro, even if you've never ridden a real bike. And that's one of the taglines for the game, is ride the broken road. In the story, the government comes in and blows up these bridges because they're trying to stop the horde. You can jump them. You know, you have to upgrade your bike, and you have to, you know, upgrade your skills in order to be able to jump some of the bigger jumps in the game and reach areas that you maybe couldn't otherwise get to.
If the player engages in side quests and does work for these encampments, he can earn enough trust and credits to buy better, faster engines and nitrous, so he can help boost out of those situations to get out of trouble.
But if the rain comes in, makes the trails all muddy, that's something the player really has to pay attention to, because, you know, then you wipe your bike out and it takes a bunch of damage, and then you're on foot for a while until you can find the scrap you need to repair it. And we wanted to make it, you know, sort of survival light, which means that we have, you know, fuel management for your bike. You really have to pay attention to it. We didn't want to get heavy-handed with it, but on the other hand, we wanted it to feel like there were stakes.
It's a world where the bike is your edge, but it's also a liability, and that you gotta manage it, and people want to take it from you.
It's not just choosing where, making sure you park far enough away so they don't hear you. It's also, hey, I'm gonna park it so that I can turn it this way, so if I need to make a quick getaway, I can just get on my bike and ride. But also, if you've upgraded your saddlebags and you have more storage, you might have extra ammo that you've brought with you. Move up on him! There is a full suite of customizations you can do on the bike. So in ways to make it yours instead of just Deacon's. So for example, you get all the different color choices, all the color palettes. There, as part of rewards for all the storylines, we have all these decals and custom painted tanks, and all that stuff can be used for you as the player to choose how you want the bike to look. I'm excited when this game comes out on April 26th to see what combinations the gaming community comes up with.
In writing the score for Days Gone, the setting played a huge part. To me, it was about the texture of the music matching the texture of the world. Acoustic, organic, a little bit of Americana. I think folk elements like that often are rough around the edges. They have an honesty that felt at home in this world and matched the grit. Nature has this special ability to make us look inward. And I think so much of the Days Gone story, people are forced to examine themselves. They're forced to look inward. The score couldn't just be about two guys riding motorcycles through isolated roads. It needed to be about the motorcycles, but it also needed to be about what's going on in Deacon's head and his regrets and his fears and his doubts. The Freakers, the infection, that is the central antagonist in the story. Finding the sound world for the Freakers involved tons of experimentation. I started bowing everything in my studio. Chairs, trash cans, cymbals. It was challenging because the Freakers needed to be terrifying, and their music also needed to connect to humanity, needed to connect to the tragedy of most of Earth's population being lost to this infection. This one cymbal recording felt really cool, it felt aggressive, it had a cool shape to it, and one of my producers on the Sony music team pointed out there's a little melody in there. When we zoomed in, I time stretched it, and there was this melodic phrase that emerged just from bowing that cymbal. That became the basis for the Freakers melody. It suddenly gave their theme all this versatility. We could have the low strings play it, and it was menacing and foreboding. And we could have the piano play it, and suddenly it connected to the tragedy. And it allowed us to weave some of this emotion, this human loss, but still have the pulse-pounding terror and aggression that the Freakers needed. Scoring Days Gone is the same as scoring 3 movies, plus figuring out how the music can be interactive and how it can respond to what the player is doing and create this immersive experience. It's a wonderful story. It's an intense story. It's sad, it's emotional. It has all these moments. And I want the music to draw the player in and help them experience that.